My special guest today is a longtime collaborator, former enemy, and now friend, Paul Thurrott, who is the major domo, I like that title, of Thurrott.com. So, Paul, thank you for joining me today on this live chat.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I don't talk to you enough every week.
I know. I agree. We need to talk more. So, and live in front of a live audience.
Yes,
so that's even better.
As all conversations should be.
Exactly. So I had this idea when I was thinking about this MJF chat about something on learning, but not just like a list of sites you can go to learn more about various technologies, which I feel like is kind of being done in many places right now because of working remotely and the pandemic. But I think you have some interesting perspectives on getting motivated and staying motivated to learn.
Oh, boy.
So that's why I wanted to bring you on this chat.
Okay. I've certainly had experienced a lack of motivation at times during the pandemic, for sure. But yeah, I mean, I feel very strongly about learning. So
that's good. Okay. So I wanted to start out the chat by asking you to tell a story I've heard you tell a couple times, but I think it's a good introduction. I have heard you tell a story about being at some IT Pro conference where somebody came up and asked you for advice, career advice, and you had kind of a startling answer for this guy. And I think it's a good kind of opening statement on why we're doing this chat. So would you mind retelling that?
Yeah, I assume you're referring, I think you're referring to it was Tech Ed, right before Ignite, Microsoft Tech Ed, as you know. And there were a couple of years in a row there where my organization at the time, which was Windows IT Pro, the former NT magazine, was holding pre-con sessions for Microsoft, right? So I don't remember the exact timing, but if the show started on Monday, maybe this was a Sunday. And I remember, I don't remember who did, who assigned who to what, but I was given the assignment of handling the IT Pro room. And I remember Mike Odie, our database guy, got the developer room, and I was really upset about that because at this time the cloud was coming, right? This is early days. There was still a lot of pushback against the cloud. I don't remember exactly what year this was. I apologize, but at this time there was still a lot of people said we're never doing this. We're never going to the cloud. We still thought at that time that email was the low-hanging fruit. Over time, we sort of evolved that into storage. But from a developer perspective, you're telling me I get to rewrite all my applications for a new environment. As I joke with Mike Cody at the time, I said it was like a conga room in your line. You guys are dancing around the tables, Meanwhile, the IT Pro room, it was like a funeral,
Yeah.
And it was like this increasingly contentious series of questions from people who, rightfully so, were worried about their jobs. And we finally had a guy stand up and say, "You mean to tell me that my final act as an Exchange administrator is going to be to complete the migration of our environment to the cloud, to Office 365, I think at the time. And then I'm out of a job." And my answer was yes, but hold on a second. And I think, that was an eye-opening interchange for me, because what it showed me was that, we're in a room full of people, and, you and I, and we go to these conferences and we interact with this crowd. These are our people. This is our community. Right. And we all got involved in personal technology at one point or another with the understanding that this is the most dynamic business on earth, that things are always changing. And in this guy's case in particular, and you got to kind of remember the time frame, which of course you can't remember because I don't remember what year it was, but there was Exchange was this on-premises email and collaboration product that Microsoft had, obviously still has, and it had gone through a series of upgrades, Office or Exchange 2000, 2003, 2007. So it was somewhere in that time frame. So for a while it was very stable. Organizations would maybe choose to skip a version, but they always knew they were going to move forward to some future version of Exchange, and that was their job.
Yep.
Whereas when they had entered the market, when they had come into this industry, they probably really weren't sure what they were going to do or where they were going to end up. Some people did end up in Exchange. Some people ended up in SQL Server. Some people ended up in SharePoint, whatever it might have been. But they got comfortable, and I think they stopped learning, basically.
Yep.
And that was kind of eye-opening to me, because not as a formal process of any kind, I'm just a person, but I mean, I've always really considered it important to always be learning, and it's kind of like swimming is to a shark. If you're not learning, you're not living,
Right.
And I unfortunately in this case, I mean, there were people who did lose jobs or had to make jobs transitions because of this cloud thing that was happening at the time, and it's still happening. But hopefully what came out of that was that people in his position grew to understand the importance of continual learning, and that they should always be prepared to be the guy or the person, the gal, or guy, whatever, to raise their hand and say, I can do that. I'm not afraid of that. I've learned about that, or whatever it might be. So
I know. I feel like we both, even though we're not IT pros ourselves, we have a lot of experience in having to adapt in our careers, our own personal careers, right? I mean, both. I don't know if you trained the way I did, but when I started out learning how to be a journalist, I always assumed it would be one way. It would be print, right? And that was the way it was going to be, right? So it's scary sometimes when you are confronted with this new reality, and it's like, okay, literally adapt or you're going away. Like you're going to just have to pick an entirely different field, right? That's your choice. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah. No, so I was going to ask you, so once you finally kind of get over your fear, or not get over it, but at least kind of embrace it, how do you take the next step, right? Like okay, like for me it was, for me it was like, okay, so I can't just do print. I'm going to have to do sometimes video, and I'm sometimes going to have to do podcasts and all these things I don't want to do. Like, how did you in your career, like, say, okay, I'm embracing change and let's go? How did you make yourself make the jump,
Yeah, like I said, it wasn't a formal thing. It wasn't like I sat down one day and I said, I have to decide. But I can go back to before I was in this industry. When I was even in high school, I was kind of a decorated artist. I won all these awards. I won the Boston Globe Scholastic Art Award. I was going to art school, and when I arrived in art school, I wasn't there more than a few months before I realized this is the fast path to never making any money. I need to do something different. And the technology stuff was something I had always been interested in as a hobby. And I think I discounted it as a career because I was so clearly going to be going into art. I was tunnel visioned, And so I kind of realized at that point I need to learn, I need to formally somehow learn, and so I went back to school, and I read back then. Everything was books. All the knowledge of our industry was in books. And for me, it was programming, it was not going to be journalism, but that's the path that I kind of chose. But I remember it was January 1998. I only know because my wife was pregnant with our first child, and we were in Florida for a wedding, and I was carting these giant SQL Server books. One was there was certification book. Back then you would do Microsoft certifications. That was how you kind of proved your knowledge of any individual topic. One of them was the programming end, and the other one was the IT administration end. I wasn't really sure which direction I wanted to go. As it turns out, I never went in either direction. But you get those comments from people at the time, because these books were Bible-sized, humongous things, and it's like, oh, a little light reading there, and well, yeah. I mean, at the time that was it. The nice thing about today is that well, first of all, certifications are kind of on the outs as it is, but there is so much knowledge online in video form or in written form. So much of it is free. There are nano degrees you can get from different, educational institutions online, various particular topics, whether it's programming related, which is what I'm still very much interested in, or IT related of all stripes, and that to me is just the best, because it's one thing you drive down to a Borders, or which doesn't exist anymore, or Barnes and Noble, and you pick up a giant certification book in whatever Microsoft or related topic that you're interested in. It may or may not be good, $60 later, and who knows, and you've wasted some time maybe. And whereas with the online stuff, you can sample it even if it's a paid course or a degree of some kind. You can get a feel for what it's like. I've paid for lots and lots of online courses, actually, and I've done lots of free ones as well. It's so nice that stuff's available. But to your point, I guess to your question is, how do you find time? So here's an interesting thing about COVID that is a semi-positive, maybe. Like you, I've been working from home for decades, right? So I'm kind of amused at all these young guys who are like, "Oh, I guess some
young
tips.
whippersnappers.
I've been home for 2 weeks. Here's some ideas what I learned." It's like, oh, nice. So, but here's what I've always thought about working from home is it's a little more honest than going into an office, because when you're in an office, you spend a lot of time talking to other people, which is great. There's benefit to that for sure. But you're interrupting people, you're interrupting workflow, you're appearing to be busy because you're there from 9 to 5. People expect you to work. If you're over there playing a video game in the corner, someone's going to call you out on it. And that's the way it is. And I always sort of felt like working from home was a little more honest, because the reality is you do X number of hours of, hard, deep work, whatever you want to call it, in a day. And then you can check in throughout the day. But when you're at home, you can run errands, you can do your laundry, you can cook, get dinner started or whatever. And it's a little more honest. And so I structure and granted, my job is particular to what I do, like you. I mean, we have similar jobs, but I structure my day such that in the mornings, especially, I'm kind of heads down writing. In the afternoon is when I have other projects, and I'm always connected. I'm always, if anything happens, I'm there. I can turn to whatever, to the computer and start writing if I have to, but it's a little less structured. And that's the time I've set aside for what I've been learning during the pandemic, which is various programming topics, but it could be, obviously it could be IT related. It could be whatever. I could learn to play the guitar, I guess, if I wanted to, but
exactly. But how do you kind of narrow your focus? Because I feel like if you just say, wow, there is so much out there, right? Like there's unlimited free courses, there's certifications you can get for cheap or free. Like how do you figure out how to not be overwhelmed by what's out there? I am
always overwhelmed. So in my particular case, so I mean, I guess if you could take what I'm trying to learn and cast it into more of an IT kind of a role, because it's very similar. If you think about programming projects or whatever, over the pandemic, I've been looking at various, Microsoft related programming things. And then I've switched my attention more recently to, web and Flutter, which is a cross-platform kind of a thing. But, you seek this stuff out. You can, there are articles on Medium that I read. I'm a subscribe to Medium, or pay for Medium. There's YouTube videos, some of which are incredible. There are formal courses at various places, and there are books. There are actually some books. I bought a Kindle book about Flutter, actually. And, between these things, you can kind of find the thing that works for you. And the type of learning. Some people learn, I think, more by reading. Some people learn more from video. I like repetition. I mean, one of the nice things is if I'm just kind of zoning out, I can replay something I've already listened to. And to me, it's the more it goes through my brain, the better it is. And of course, hands-on, I think IT and programming alike. I mean, you have to do the work. I mean, so you can't just digest content. You also have to work it, creating programs in my case or whatever.
Right. I think one interesting thing I know that you also do is in your off hours, quote unquote, off hours. It feels like all our hours are on or off these days, right? You also do other kinds of learning, right? Like I know you do Duolingo language lessons, and you listen to a lot of audiobooks, and some of the audiobooks I know you listen to are things that I would consider work. But for you, they're fun. So how did you figure out there, like what you want to spend your downtime on? Because I feel like in some ways, what you do in your downtime inspires and motivates your uptime and your work time.
Right. Well, I think, like we gravitate obviously toward the things we're interested in or like or whatever. Right. And, the language learning thing was nice because I mean, back when we were still in Boston, my wife and I used to go into Boston and take French classes at the French Institute. But it's time consuming. It's 30 minutes on a train, 20-minute car ride, a 20-minute walk, and then an hour class. And then all of a sudden your entire day is gone. And it's only once a week, or maybe it's twice a week, and it's not really enough. You kind of need a little bit more than that. And for me, it just so happened that something like Duolingo makes sense, but I can't sit here and speak to you fluently in Spanish. But it's, what I'm looking for is what I call, menu language. I can go into a foreign country and read the menu and not need any help, which is nice. So that was just kind of a goal that I've had for a long time, and that's just happens to be what worked for me. And so over time, it kind of moves in that direction. But like you, I don't commute to work, right? My commute and walking down some stairs, and so there's not a lot of time there for reading. I have time set aside in the morning to read mostly news, and then for me, I go to the gym, so I listen to the audiobooks and that stuff at the gym, or if I'm not going to a gym, if I'm walking, it would be that time. And so you have to kind of set aside the time. I feel like all of us, I fall into this trap. We're all so busy, but we also really do have time to get things done that are important to us, and we all have decisions to make. The agreement I have with my wife is that at 8 o'clock, we watch TV together during the week. But that means before 8 o'clock, that's my time. So I stop working usually around 5. Not really, right? I mean, if work is whatever time, but I'm spending time on those things that I care about between 5. Well, we eat dinner, of course, but I usually have an hour or two even between dinner and that together time, and I try to spend that time doing that kind of stuff.
I feel like you are very much more no, I don't want to use the word regimented, but you break your day into bite-sized things. Like you talk about having time for dedicated work and time for this, kind of personal growth study kind of thing. I feel like I'm just terrible at that, and I feel like I don't structure my time that way, and maybe that's to my detriment. But I wonder if there's ways that people who are more disorganized, like me, could kind of take some lessons from that.
Well, first of all, I mean, part of what I do is compulsive to some degree. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think that people should try to be more compulsive, but structuring your day and everyone's day is different. Some people are morning people, some people are night people, et cetera. I'm more of a night person. And I get up, I make a point now, I get up early and I walk the dog, and I hate it. Like every day I want to put this thing off. I hate it. It's just not my kind of a thing. But I think, unfortunately, there's no one thing that works for everybody. So I evolved this over time. I know for myself that no matter what time I get up, that first 4 hours is my prime time for focus, and I can write. And if I'm not interrupted by phone calls back in the day, or these days, Skype messages or whatever, I can crank through a lot. I have days when I write an astronomical number of words. And that's a lot of that happens at that time, not in the afternoon. And so, but someone else, they may have the opposite schedule. It may be a different thing. I worked in banking for several years. I used to take time at lunch and read up on programming topics. Same thing. I had Bible-sized, Charles Petzold book about programming Windows that people used to make fun of at the bank. But
who's laughing now, though?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, Petzold was right. I told you. But yeah. Yeah, actually, well, anyway, who knows? I'm glad I'm not in banking. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
But our schedules. Everyone has different schedules, and everyone's different. And I think you need to just figure out what works for you. So it's the same thing with the types of things used, for whether it's a book or a video or an online course or whatever. It's some combination of video and hands-on stuff, whatever. You need to. Unfortunately, you have to do a little bit of work to kind of figure out what works best for you.
Definitely. So I'm going to ask you a question that everyone asks you and me all the time.
Wow.
I'm guessing they ask you this because they ask me this. How do you stay current with the rapidly shifting tech landscape, right? People are always like, okay, how are you like on top of things so much? Because I unlike you, I only cover Microsoft, right? And it's still hard to stay on top of everything because they're in so many pies and things are changing so fast, like TikTok's on, TikTok's off. Yes, no, right? Yep. So how do you do it? How do you stay up to date with what's changing in tech?
Yeah, so it's funny that's evolved over time, as would expect. In fact, the way I got into this industry in a way is I was working and going to school at a community college in Arizona, and we used to get these industry publications that you remember, like PC Week and Information Week.
I used to write for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we used to get, and they were like kind of like mini newspapers almost. They had kind of that large format style, and they were thinner but big things. And I would flip through them, and I would find the stuff that was interesting, and I would send out an email to people in the department. Hey, these guys wrote this thing, and this is why I think this is important. You need to read this. And the modern version of that, what I do today, is kind of a combination of old school stuff. Like I still use an RSS feed, which I think is pretty unusual for people these days. Okay, I find that works really well. I mean, obviously, you get email, right, from people, and sources or Microsoft directly will email us. Twitter has emerged as a great place for up to the second news. And I will say, you and I did a presentation at least once, and it was kind of it it was for older people in the industry, and how, you shouldn't be made to feel bad because you're older and you are the experienced one. Remember that. And I remember the guy kind of said, when you guys aren't ripping on young people, or something to that nature, which was funny, and we didn't intend it to be like that. But
yeah.
I will say, working with younger people like Brad and Mahedi, especially, who's off now and hopefully will come back. But, I've also learned from how younger people work, because they seem to jump onto these newer things more quickly than I would, if ever. I don't know how you feel about podcasts, for example, but like I would never have started a podcast. I was invited to do Windows Weekly. It's not something that ever would have occurred to me, so I kind of backed into it. But I mostly, I would say it's a combination of, we have sources and people like us who do the jobs like we do, who we keep in touch with each other. That's how I met Brad, through you. We have email, obviously, and RSS, which are kind of old school, ways of doing things, but they still work great. And I think Twitter, is the big one. Yeah. I don't sit there with Twitter on a second screen like a dashboard with multiple columns. To me, that's a lot of noise. But then again, I do spend time manually switching between those columns in a single view. That's my style. I'm just, I am certainly stuck in my ways in some ways.
Okay, speaking of stuck, nice segue there. Thanks.
Okay.
So, okay, when you are stuck, when you're just like not motivated and you're really stuck and you're like, I need to work, I need to do this, I need to do that. How do you get unstuck? And I'm guessing part of this is a Call of Duty answer, but maybe not.
Yeah, it is. But I would generalize it, because literally, and this is almost psychology, or I don't know, it's almost like just a self-help topic. Mm-hmm. Everyone has experienced this. You're stuck with some problem. You can't figure it out. Why won't this thing go together? I can't screw it together. It doesn't work. Or why can't I figure out the problem? Whatever it is. And then you step away and you're in the shower, you're at the supermarket, you're asleep. And all of a sudden, oh, that's the answer. Yep. And the answer to unsticking yourself is to step away from it and not be in front of it. And that could be literally play Call of Duty. One of the reasons I play video games is not just to play video games. I mean, there are all kinds of video games, but these games are 5 or 7 minutes a piece. And if something happens, I just end the game. I don't care. I don't have to be part of that. And I can't tell you how many times I've been staring at a screen of video game mayhem or whatever, and I've been, that's it. That's the thing. Or it's even as simple as, that's the word I was looking for a sentence. That's the segue I needed to make this make sense. Sometimes, unfortunately, it happens. I'm walking out on the trail and I'm a mile from home, and it's like, damn it, I'm too far away. But or I'd be at the gym or in the car, going on an errand or something. So I mean, this is not like a super deep IT question or answer. It's really, sometimes you have to step away. And I got to say again, if you're looking for a silver lining to COVID, one of the nice things, I think we're going to reset the way we do things. More people are going to work from home. Not everybody, but more. And people might split up time between work and home for work-related stuff. I think it's going to give people the ability to say it's okay to zone out, take a nap in the afternoon, or whatever. This is the type of stuff that would be completely unacceptable in many workplaces where someone's always
Yes, it would. I'm thinking of people. I actually found someone napping when I worked at ZDNet under the copy machine, and it was unacceptable.
But that person was probably doing well by themselves.
Yes, they were. I just shut the door and let them keep sleeping, and then came in a half hour and woke them up before anyone else found them.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. So we've talked kind of around this, but favorite resources. So we talked about Duolingo. We mentioned that. I think you also are a big fan of Khan Academy, if I recall. But what if you're just throwing out some resources and saying, if you're just like, I don't even know where to begin, what are some places you would suggest people look?
So I would divide these between programming and IT, I guess, right? So I'm really interested in the stuff. Udacity, Coursera, Udemy are the big ones for me. Udemy in particular, Udemy's funny because they'll have this class. It's normally $250, but it's only $16. It's always $16, So some of their classes are really inexpensive. It's neat, and that's really nice. On the IT side, if you haven't, I mean, they keep changing. Microsoft Virtual Academy was the thing for a while. Microsoft Learn, which is part of the Microsoft Docs website. So I think it's just docs.microsoft.com/learn probably is an amazing resource. The former lynda.com, which is now, I think, LinkedIn Learning, right?
Yep. Right.
Is the other big one. But again, these are the formal places, right? These are literal classes. Sometimes they're classes on a schedule. You have to sign up. It starts on a certain date. You do a certain amount of work each week, and it ends at a certain date, and you get some kind of recognition if you finish it. But I really think some of the informal stuff, or even, Udacity is a place where you can pay a lot of money actually for a nano degree, but they also have these free courses, and it's kind of a neat way just to get in on a topic and figure out for yourself whether or not you want to go in that direction, and not spend any money. So there's just a ton of that kind of stuff.
Great. Well, thanks. I actually learned a lot, and maybe I'll even use some of this in my own journey.
Maybe you'll play Call of Duty.
No, let's not go that far. Okay. But yeah, maybe I always threaten to do this. I'm like, I should take a programming course just to see, because I've never tried it, and maybe I would like it.
I will add, I think you'd be good at it, because the really interesting thing in this industry where a lot of people involved in personal technology as a career are musicians, are cooks like you are, are programmers, right? And these things, they're all actually, when you think about it, I mean, a recipe and creating a food item out of a recipe is very much like creating a program.
True. Yeah, that's very true.
Musician, same thing. There's a lot of overlap between these.
Beer brewing, another area.
Absolutely. No, that's true. Beer brewing, also a distillery or winemaking. These are all the same wheelhouse, really.
It's really true. All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Paul. Sure. I really appreciate you carving out some of your day just for
this is normally my unstructured time. It was a little structured. It's okay.
Little Call of Duty intrusion, I'm sure. And for everyone else who's been watching and listening, I will be posting information very soon on Petri.com about who my next guest will be. And you can submit questions directly on Twitter for that guest if you would like. And in the meantime, if you know of anybody else who you'd like to see do one of these MJF chats with me, even yourself, please do not hesitate to drop me.
You can nominate yourself.
You can nominate yourself. Everyone will win. So thanks again. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.